second questions के लिए आपको ले रहा हूँ. And first, सबसे पहले फतेह भाई को लेके I'm going to ask Mahanur about her experience. Then I'm going to ask Usman about his experience, and then I'll take the question.
Okay, let's start.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. This is presented to you with Appna YPC in collaboration with Aimcaana. I'm glad you guys are here. I first want to thank my panelists. We have Dr. Muhammad Fateh Shehzad. We all know him well. He has been a part of Appna Advisory Committee, and he has done a phenomenal job over the past few years in getting the visas, promoted to the embassy and things like that. I still remember a few years ago, 3-4 years ago, there was a lot of issues with our visas getting on hold, and Fateh Bhai was instrumental in helping us. So I'm glad you're here, Fateh Bhai. And we have Dr. Umar Tariq. He's an intervention radiologist, and most of you guys know him as well. He's been doing a phenomenal job in hosting different webinars and doing YouTube videos about educational resources that you guys have. And we are still waiting for Dr. Ahmed Rehan Khan, who's a psychiatrist. I think he hasn't joined us yet, but we'll wait for him. And then we have Mahanur, who is an incoming PGY1 neurology resident. I'm glad you're here. We can ask you some questions about your experience and how things went. And we have a medical student as well, Dr. Usman Haider, who recently got his B1, B2 visa approved and is currently in US. So I'm glad you guys are here. So let's start. The purpose of this webinar was that we've been recently hearing about a lot of questions that people have about the different types of visas, and especially over the last few months, there have been a lot of visa rejections, and there's been a lot of frustration in the medical students applying for the visa. The main purpose of this webinar is that we want to remove some of the myths. I think in the past, the visa acceptance rate was much higher, and it was not a lot of issue about actually preparation for the visa. Now, recently, with visas being rejected, I understand there's a lot of frustration and anxiety related to the visa interviews. So it's important that we at least remove some of the myths. And some of the questions that I've been hearing from the medical students are just bizarre. They're answering some bizarre scenarios. So the questions are still pretty standard from the visa embassy, but the answers that medical students are sometimes giving are not top notch. So first, a disclaimer that we are not giving you legal advice. This is just our opinion. We want to make sure that we communicate with you the best possible answers and how to navigate the visa process. But this is by no means legal advice. So please take it with caution. So we'll start first. Fateh Bhai, I want to ask you some basic questions first. I want to ask you about what different types of visas are. This is pretty basic. Most of us should know this, but I think we want to remove some of the myths from that question as well. So what is a B1 visa? What is a B2 visa? What is a H1 visa? What is a J1 visa? If you can unmute yourself. Fateh Bhai, we can't hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me all now?
Yes, we can.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers and to be fathers. Thank you, Naman, for making this happen again, because we already had a webinar. We'll talk about types of visa. Sharam, you asked me about B and B1 and B2. These are basically visit visas, or it's also called business visa. So usually given to tourists. So B1, B2, basically same. Most of the time we get B1 if you have a dependent, your child, your spouse, and that visa is called B2. So that B2 is basically dependent of B1. Sometimes you bring with your family members, so that's what the B2 is for. Requirement are you have to show ties to home country. For that, you have to show some property links or any kind of bank statement, job statement, anything to prove that you will come back, because the visit visa. Then the J1 visa, same as J1 is for the primary applicant for residents who are going to be sponsored by ECFMG. It's exchange visitor visa. Over here, you don't have to show ties with the home country, like bank statements and any property, because you're supposed to come and work here. Your dependent, which can be your spouse and children, get J2, and they get EAD, which is employment authorization document, and they can work on this EAD. Then H1 and H4. H1 is again is a kind of immigrant visa, and is sponsored by your program, not ECFMG. You do not need statement of need for this, but there are other additional documents you need. Again, you don't have to prove strong ties with your country. You're going to come and work here and get paid. H4 is going to be your dependent, and usually H4 does not get EAD. The main difference between J1 and H1 is that J1 you have to do 2-year home residency, which is you come back, live in your home country for 2 years, then you can come back on H1 visa if you get a job, and H1 does not have to do this requirement. J1 can do hardship waiver or other national interest waiver. Most of the applicants do that waiver in United States. There is a shortage of doctors, and you can easily get J1 waiver here. Thank you.
Thanks, Fatawai. So the format of this is going to be question answer session. So we're gonna ask all of you guys to have your questions ready and raise your hand and turn on your video if you have to ask the questions in person, and we actually encourage that. If not, you can still leave us questions in the Q&A session. I'll now move to Mahnur, who recently got her visa approved. Can you give us your experience?
Yeah,
with the
sure.
visa process?
So I think this time when I was applying for the J1, it was quite a contrast to my B1, B2 interview, where I was asked a lot of questions about where I'm staying, how I'm staying, how did I get my rotations, letters, proofs, step exams. For this one, it was quite straightforward. I had an in-person interview during which, first of all, I think it's important because especially this time of the year, a lot of students are going for their F1 visa for universities. So she asked me the name of my program. So when I told her it was Southern Illinois University, she was like, oh, you're a student. So you have to clarify that you're not. So like she wanted to know about that. And the other emphasis of the entire interview was just like my plans for while in the time that I am in the United States. And she specifically asked me about coming back. She's like, what do you want to do when you come back? How do you want to practice? She also asked me about my credentials and if I had a permanent license in Pakistan already, and if I did my intern year, and that was pretty much it. But like mostly it was about what do I want to do once I'm done with residency fellowship. So I think you do have to clarify that being on a J1 for now, it's better to just be like, I'm going to come back.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this is an important point, and we will discuss a little bit more about this point, about the difference between specifically the J1 visa and H1 visa. So secondly, we have Usman Haider, who recently got his B1 visa approved. Usman, if you want to give us your experience.
Well, sir, basically, my interview was Islamabad Embassy, and basically asked me the same questions that are already posted in different groups, like what's your purpose of visit, what's your interested specialty, who is sponsoring your trip, and where are you going to for accommodation, how did you get this rotation, do you have your license, are you planning to come back, and he specifically asked me some questions which were not asked before, like my father was sponsoring my trip, and he asked for the property documents and the bank statements that I showed him, and basically this was the interview.
All right. All right. Thanks, Usman. Now we'll open the floor to questions from the participants. Please raise your hands and unmute yourself and turn on your video, please. First question would be from Abdullah Imtiaz. Abdullah, you can ask your question, please.
Sharam, in the meantime, can I briefly address something?
Sure.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you give us 1 second, please? Yes, Omar bhai.
Yes. Actually, I also got my visa approved recently after one rejection from Karachi Embassy. And it was my second time I was applying for the B1, B2 visa. So currently I am in the US. While I was filling my DS-160 form, I was very cautionate about the things. So because I think DS-160 form should be quite elaborative. So I mentioned a 40 days stays on my DS-160 because at that time I had only one opportunity to observe a clinical practice of a doctor, and I had step 3 as well. Since I got my passport late and while I came here, I got more opportunity to observe the clinical practice like everyone gets here. So I'm asking, will that be a contradictory to what I have mentioned in my DS-160 and what I am going to do here, because I'm thinking to stay for almost 3 months. So will that cause problem in my future J1 applications?
All right.
Sure.
Thanks, Abdullah. Umar bhai, if you can take this question, and I want to add a little bit more. If you can briefly describe the duration of stays on the subsequent visit. For example, if you have a B1, B2 visa, you have a 5 years B1, B2 visa, and you come to US multiple times. So how do you approach that? How long should you stay, and when should you go back? Umar
Exactly.
bhai.
Thank you, Shriram. I'm slightly confused at the question. You said, I would actually let Fateh Bhai address this. I think he's much more knowledgeable about this. Fateh Bhai, if you want to answer that,
Sure.
please go ahead.
Once again, I will request everybody to turn their videos on. I will request not to take question if their video is not on.
We are not able to turn on video because I don't know, our option for the video is not turned on.
Okay, Umar will take care of that. So Abdullah,
Yeah,
thank you for asking this question.
I would agree. They are as attendees, they are not able to turn their videos on.
Okay, then it's our system failure. So about Abdullah, your question about B1, so you put certain days, 30 days or 60 days in your DS-160.
Yes.
That's okay because you really don't know how many days you're going to stay. It's good to put not more than 60 days in your DS-160. Approximate dates are okay because you still have to get visa, you still have to, fulfill all the requirement. So you don't have to travel by that time. These are just approximate dates. So once you go for interview, and by that time, if you know you are going to get another observership or rotation, then you should mention that to the interviewing officer that I'm going to stay for 3 months.
Okay.
Because everything is documented or actually recorded, your voice as well as your video is recorded. So then if for some reason you did not mention and you got another observership, so when you get to the airport for immigration, you tell them that I did request 60 days, but I got another opportunity, so I'm going to stay 90 days, 120 days, because that's also recorded. One of you guys, I won't name him, but he got into trouble. He is applying for J1 this year. His case is in administrative processing. He came on B1 for 30 days, and he stays here for 180 days. Now, it was legal because usually they allow you 180 days or 6 months. But he did say only 30 days during interview and when he came to have his immigration. But he stayed 60 days. So when he left, he had multiple entry visa. So when he went back to Pakistan, he got an email, his previous visa was revoked just because of this. So he would have a hard time getting B1 again, but hopefully he should be able to get J1. I'm working on his case. So you have to be very, very careful. Other problem these days we're facing that the officer on arrival just give you 30 days. So that means you should leave before that. If they give you 60 days, if they give you 90 days, even if they give you 180 days, but you mention about 2 months, then please leave in 2 months and then come back if you have multiple entry visa. Shahram, your question about how many days, that all depends on when you come for second time, third time, fourth time on multiple entry visa. It all depends on how many days you get on arrival. So that will be mentioned. Sometimes they put a stamp and tell you from this date to this date, you can enter and leave. Sometimes they tell you verbally. So verbal is as important as written because again, it's recorded and they will put on your I-94 record. So if they say you're allowed to stay 30 days, but they don't write anything, does not mean that they forgot. So that is on the system that you're supposed to leave in 30 days. Now, sometime on the visa, it will say enter from this state to this state. So that's a little bit confusing case to case. Most of the time, people think that those are the dates I can leave. I can just get into it. But nowadays they are taking it as this is the time you should come and leave. So, but further clarification will be done when you get to the immigration office or immigration desk on arrival. So they will clarify further that you can stay 30 days or 60 days. But that is important. Whatever the immigration officers tells you or writes on your passport are put on your I-94 record, which you can access. I'm
All right.
done.
Thank you so much, Fateh bhai. Can I ask just a follow-up question about this?
Sure.
And then Umar bhai, there was a comment that he wanted to make. So it has been the case, like for many, many years, that whenever you get a B1, B2 visa, you're entering the US, they give you entry for 6 months. And we were always recommended, and we always recommended to our juniors as well, like, try and leave the US as soon as you're done. For example, if you have a couple of rotations, if you're done in a couple of months' time, and you don't have any other rotation in a couple of more months or 2-3 more months, don't stay there just because you're trying to look for opportunities. If you do have opportunities, let's say you have 2, 3, 4 observerships lined up and you have to stay for 3-4 months, that's okay. But we're generally recommending that, especially if you are coming to US again and again, try not to stay for like the 6 months duration. Are they getting more strict about this, Fateh bhai? Like, if you end up staying longer durations, because even if they allow you for 6 months time, let's say,
Yeah.
and if you end up staying 6 months every time you come to US, is it becoming more of a problem this year?
It depends on what you mentioned on your DS-160 and you during your visa interview and arrival. Nowadays, to doctors for observership, they're really not giving 6 months, 30 days, 60 days. They're actually telling very clearly that you're supposed to leave after 30 days or after 60 days. You can come back and again, but it used to be last year 180 days, but now it's 30, 60, maximum 90 days. That's why you should request, if you're going to do 3 months, just during your interview or on arrival, you tell the officer that, yes, I did request 30 days or request 60 days during my interview, but I got another opportunity. Would I be allowed to stay 90 days? So there's nothing wrong asking for it. कि उसकी मर्जी होती है, वो आपको 1 महीने का दे दे, 2 महीने का दे दे, 3 महीने का, 6 महीने से ज्यादा तो वो दे नहीं सकते. तो मतलब है कि if you request politely, they usually honor your request.
Thank you, Fateh bhai. Umar bhai?
Thank you, Mr. Ram. First of all, thank you everyone for coming here. Happy Father's Day. I appreciate especially the efforts of all the speakers doing this on Sunday morning. Second, I see there are 30 people watching us on YouTube Live. For those who are watching us on YouTube Live, please subscribe to our Appna channel and give us a like, thumbs up. That helps us promote our YouTube channel, and it actually benefits us. So far, our Appna YouTube channel has not been monetized, and we just need 100 more watch hours. So if you can watch that, help us with that, we can get some funds from YouTube and then utilize that to help you and serve you guys better. Second thing is, let me briefly talk about different types of visas. So remember, there are 3 different types of visas: immigration intent, non-immigration intent, and dual intent. How are you going to prepare for your interview and answer the questions really depends on what kind of visa you're applying for. B1, B2, J1, these are non-immigration intent. If you go for these visas and you tell them that I'm going to live in America for the rest of my life, that doesn't serve the purpose. It's going to go against you because you're telling them that I'm applying for a non-immigrant visa, but I plan to live in US for the rest of my life. So these are very specific role-based visas. If you get a B1, B2 visa for step 3, make sure you take your step 3 and come back. If you get it for observership, make sure you go do your observership and come back. If you get it for J1, you shouldn't say that I plan on living in US for the rest of my life. That is mainly, J1 is typically given for exchange visitors. So this is more like an exchange training. You're going from Pakistan to train in US to go back to your home country and serve your home country. So that is J1. Now, then there is a family immigration or the fiancé visa and all these. Those are immigration intent. So when you apply for those visas, you have to clarify that I don't plan to come back. I applied for that, and that's a mistake I did because I was a med student then, and I kept on saying I have to come back to my med school. So I had to clarify that, I'm doing that just to complete my studies, but I plan on being in US for the rest of the life afterwards. So that is immigration intent. Then there is a dual intent. That is H1. Anything H1 or H4, those are dual intent. You can plan to stay in US or you can come back. So that is just for quick clarification. Now, you need to understand what's the difference between status and visa. When you go to embassy, you get a stamp. When you get a stamp, that says how long your visa is valid for. Is that valid for 1 year or 5 years? Status is when you enter into US at the port of entry, they put a stamp on your passport. That tells you how long you can stay in US. That could be 1 month, that could be 3 months, that could be 6 months. It used to be 6 months and they didn't used to care about it, how long you stay, as long as you leave before those 6 months. But now they are becoming more and more strict. If you have a stamp of 6 months and you got it for step 3 and you took your step 3 in first week or first 2 weeks, you shouldn't really stay longer. Plan everything beforehand, or at your port of entry, tell the person who is stamping your visa that you're taking step 3 and then you plan on doing observership. The problem is when there are contradicting statements. You applied for visa and then you told them that I'm going there only for step 3. And then when you entered at your first port of entry, you told them I'm going to take my step 3 within a week. And you did take it up within a week. And they just happened to stamp you for 6 months. And then you're staying for full 6 months in the US. That's not illegal, that's not overstaying, but that is technically lying. Because it has been happening for at least past 2-3 decades, now they have become more and more strict about it. I hope that clarifies a lot of things. I just wanted to make that quick comment. Farah, thanks.
Thanks, Umar bhai. I think Ahmed Khan is able to join us now. Ahmed bhai, if you have a comment. All right, I'll take my next question. So we have Habib Mashuri. You can unmute yourself and please ask your question. Habib, you can ask your question and you can unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. We can hear you, Habib.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm actually a final year medical student from Karachi, Pakistan, and I recently filled and submitted my DS-160 form, and I have an interview in November. So I have my prof exams till after that, and I do plan on traveling to the US by the end of December for clinical electives. So I have a question. Recently, we've been seeing a lot of rejections, and I was recently reading one of the posts in Appna group that even a medical student who had a university elective hands-on letter, they were rejected the visa because apparently the visa officer rejected it because saying that you cannot do hands-on on a visit visa, that's your B1 and B2, but it clearly states that you can do a clinical elective that's hands-on on a visit visa, that's B1, B2. So with this situation, it's just so hard for medical students to first of all get a clinical elective that's associated with university because most med schools have shifted to VSLO, and only few Pakistani med schools can get their opportunities for medical electives. And other than that, it's very hard to find university hospital electives for medical students because most of these rotations are super expensive, costing around $5,000, $6,000 for just 4 weeks. So in this situation, for a medical student who is in this kind of dilemma, what should be our approach to such situations? How much stay we should mention on our DS-160? And for example, I plan to do 3 months rotation, and I did put 3 months of stay on my DS-160, which I'm thinking maybe I should change it back to 2 months because I feel like 3 months is a lot for a medical student because I'm probably sure they're going to ask me when I'm graduating, and that is going to be by the end of March. So in this situation, what should a person do if they are a medical student? How should they approach form filling out a DS-160 if they're going to go to a clinical elective? What should the ideal duration be, and how should they speak about at the interview when they tell you that you are not supposed to do hands-on on a visit visa?
Okay. All right. So to summarize the question, the first part of the question is that can we do hands-on clinical rotation while we're on B1, B2 visa? And second part is about the duration that we already mentioned. So I'll leave the floor to my panelists if someone wants to chime in and answer this question.
Okay, yeah, I can add. Ahmad here. First of all, I apologize for the video. I'm just moving in to the new house, so was just busy with that. So a few things I would
Congratulations.
like to. I thank you. A few things I would like to mention before I answer his question. So we have been talking a lot about the duration of stay. I'll tell you one thing. Uh, I got my first US visa as a 6-month single entry back in 2014. And then the next visa which I got was 1 year multiple entry. Now, I stayed at least, so for the first time when I went, I stayed for 40 days. That was what I mentioned. Second time, I mentioned like 2 months. And I think I stayed for 5 months each. And then third time, and I did not get matched during that time. So I applied for another visa. I think I got lucky because I had already taken step 3. Did not have residency interviews at that time, but I had some observership letters. So I got the visa, multiple entry 5 year. So over the span of these years on my B1, B2, I did stay for 4 or 5 months, quite a few times. And at that time, it felt okay to me. But later, what happened is that I got my initial J1 fine, but my second J1, when I came back during my residency, it was sent to processing. I stayed in Pakistan for 3 months. And during that time, actually, I was able to make some meaningful connections with the State Department, with the consulates and stuff, even and also volunteered for them. My videos, my posts are at their websites and their Facebook and Twitter pages. So that was fine. I stayed there for 3 months. I got off cycle. I could not become a chief resident and all that. Then when I came back, I finished my residency and I got hardship waiver. So for hardship waiver, I had to go back to Pakistan to get my visa stamped. Or I mean, you have to leave US. And I was very sure that nothing would happen because I had already been through those processing. Now State Department knows me. But they did the same with me. And at that time, I had to stay for 4 months. So you have to consider these things that someone like me, and I'm not saying that I'm a celebrity or anything, but they knew me. They personally knew me. They had, when second time on H1B, when they put my visa in processing, I told the visa officer that you can see my videos on your page. And he told me that it is from the back end. So a lot of time, what back end means is that State Department just wants some extra time. So what I'm saying is that try not to stay for more than 2 months. And I did post that on the YPC page as well. I understand tickets are expensive. I understand opportunities are limited, but you got to understand that even despite of putting so much hard work, if they don't grant you J1 or H1 visa or put it in processing and you lose your residency spot, at the end of the day, is it worth it? So, and again, these are things that happen to me. These are things that happen to other people. Then there are people who go scot-free, who do not get into that trouble. And to answer your question, I think that electives are considered hands-on, and you can do electives on B1 visa. But when you graduate, once you graduate, and they ask, so it's hands-on is externship. Legally, it's allowed, but they don't understand. A lot of visa officers don't understand that. So you have to word it in a way that I would be shadowing physician. The word we use is shadowing. So use that if you're not a medical student. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanvik.
Sharam, can I make a quick comment here?
Sure.
So, listen, applicants, it's very important for you guys to realize that what's the difference between these terms: observerships, externships, and electives. When can you do electives? You can only do electives by the time before your graduation, when you're awarded the degree. So what a lot of people do is, as soon as they're able to take their final year exams, there's typically a lag, or there used to be a lag of getting your degree. So that during that time, they will do this 2-3 months of electives. So that is the time when you can do electives, and you can do hands-on electives on B1, B2. That's not a problem. If the issue is malpractice, as long as the reason you pay this much money for electives is because they have to pay a significant portion of that for your malpractice. In case you're doing a physical examination, or you accidentally poke them with a needle, though it was just happened to be, there is a lot of litigation involved in US healthcare. So that is the main reason this is an issue. Now, when you have already graduated, you cannot do externship unless you have malpractice insurance. So if you're touching the patient, there's a potential of it going to a lawsuit. That's why all this discussion is there. So just be mindful of that. And as far as the risk of getting rejected is concerned, remember, I briefly talked about different types of visas, right? The 3 different types: immigration intent visas, non-immigration intent, and dual intent. So how you prove that? You prove that with your home ties. And what are the home ties? I know a lot of people who got their visa rejected for B1, B2 because they didn't have a job and they would just happen to be sitting at home doing nothing. So, or studying for step 1, but that doesn't mean anything. So they got a job, they had property in their name, they showed their bank accounts, and they showed to the visa officer that I am gonna come back. I have strong home ties. Now that only works if you're applying for a non-immigrant visa, like a J1 or B1, B2. If you're applying for an immigration intent visa, then you need to show your home ties to US. You need to show that, okay, I'll be living in US. I have sold my properties in Pakistan. I have resigned from my job. You cannot tell them that, oh, I still have good home ties and I'm going to come back. So just be mindful of what kind of visa you're applying for. Make sure you show good home ties in your, during your interview. And the third thing is that for clinical electives, listen, because of COVID, a lot of places stopped offering electives. I have a whole website on medidia.com and a YouTube channel on how to do electives. For the past 3 years, nobody has been able to get electives. And if you think that it's a new thing that you have to pay thousands of dollars for electives, even in 2009, I paid $4,000 to Yale, $1,000 to, I think it was UCSF. So all these places, they have been always charging money for electives. That's where, all this comes in. So it's not a new thing. So just calculate, and let me answer this thing, which has also been asked. Every year, many people match without having electives. If you have other things that you can supplement your CV with, that's great. If you can afford, try your best to do electives. Thank you.
Thanks, Mumbai. So just to clarify, there's one legal aspect, one medical legal aspect, and one legal aspect. For example, just to clarify for everyone, so B1, B2 visa, there's no problem in doing hands-on practice as far as the visa is concerned. But we generally don't recommend saying that we want you guys to say, I'm going to go there for shadowing. It becomes easy for everyone to understand. But for the medical legal perspective, you can't really do hands-on practice because you have to have malpractice insurance, as Umar Bhai said. But just strictly from the visa standpoint, if you have a B1, B2 visa, yes, you can do your electives. Yes, you can do your hands-on externships, and you can do your observerships. That's not a problem. And I saw this on the YPC page as well. Like, there was someone who was saying that his visas got rejected because he said he's going to do electives or externships on his visa. I'm not sure how that happened. It might be a one-off, or the visa, officer probably didn't understand that he's a medical student and he's doing electives. But generally speaking, for the electives, B1, B2 visas has been there for many, many years, right? Then generally don't get rejected just because you're doing electives. They don't reject your visa. And generally speaking, even if you say externship versus observership, it should not be an issue, because, for example, touching someone, you come to US, you touch anyone you want to, right? As long as it's consentful, they don't reject your visa because you're touching someone. Touching a patient is a separate issue because you have to have malpractice insurance. But the visa officer shouldn't worry about this. But for you to be safe, just say that you're going to go shadow or you're going to do observership while you're applying as a graduate. And when you're applying as a medical student, of course, if you're doing electives, you have to say you're doing your elective.
Sharam, a quick comment. I just noticed, so the format of this entire meeting is as a webinar. In webinar, participants cannot switch on their video. That's the technical issue. So the way we're going to address this, I'm going to go and I'm looking at all the hands that are raised. I'm going to promote them to panelists, switch on their video. You're going to just take their questions and then I'll remove them from panelists. All right. So, and I also see Manur, she has her hand raised, so we can take that, and I'll take a couple of people and put them in panelists for you to take their questions.
I just wanted to add to what Dr. Tariq was saying, right? So yeah, previously it was very common for students to go like right after final prof for electives and stay there till the result comes in, and during that time they're still a student, so they would do those. I've seen with a lot of my colleagues, their visas getting rejected for those kind of electives. The reason for that is that they will almost always ask you in your B1, B2 interview, when are your exams? When do you graduate? And if you tell them, I'm going after my exams, but oh, I'm going to come back for graduation, showing up at your graduation ceremony is not a requirement. You know, you could very well just stay in the US as well. So I feel that these days, the strongest candidate is one who has still got like at least their final prof left. So go somewhere at the end of fourth year. That makes you a better candidate. It's easier to get a visa for an elective than an observership. But at the same time, if you were a student, always mention that you're doing an elective. You're not allowed to do observerships as a student. I've known people who've literally been turned back from Abu because of this technicality, right? So ideally, and the third thing that really they look at these days, which they didn't before, was having taken at least one step exam. They don't want you to go without one USMLE attempt, one exam at least, and they ask to see your score report usually. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thanks,
Okay,
Manu.
Sharam, can I add?
Sure.
Okay,
Go for the
so Manu had a good point that try to do it in fourth year if you can. I will just talk about what you will do on the interview days, because the question was asked about being a student and B1 visa. So don't volunteer any information. If they don't ask you, say hands-on training or not, don't volunteer. Just answer only the question you're asked. And if they do ask, sometimes they do ask, is going to be hands-on training or no? So you should take it not just abruptly that you don't know, and this is B1 is just purely dependent on the mood of the visa officer. So just be polite and be politically correct. Just say that I'm a student in fourth year at this medical college. I have been communicating with this university who has offered me electives, and I have paid for, because you did pay for elective, for the malpractice insurance, and they will allow me hands-on training. So if you word that way, that will be helpful, because these officers are not familiar with the kind of all the terminology, because they're there only for 60 days or 90 days. Pakistan is a hardship area, so people don't stay there for a long time. When I talk to them, they say, we're not allowed to get out. So we get bored because staying in the embassy for 90 days is like a prison. So they don't stay there too long. So they have this ongoing issue, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, they keep changing. They do get training, but not exactly for the doctors and medical students. So they consider B1 is unemployment visa. You cannot work. So hands-on training is considered as work for those who understand that aspect. So they will say you cannot do hands-on training. But if you word in a way that if they ask, if they don't ask, don't mention it's hands-on training. For observership, you simply, even if they don't ask, you say it's volunteer, unpaid, and without physical contact with patients. So remember those three words for observership and other rotations. One more thing don't forget is about step 3. If you're applying B1 or B1 to come here to do step 3 or any even observership, make sure you have full PMDC license. And for that reason, you should do house job, because that is your tie. That when you go there without a PMDC full license, they say you cannot come and work. So why should come back to work? So please do house job and do have a PMDC full license to get a B1 visa. If you're not student, you should fulfill those conditions. Not that everybody gets denied, but most of people do get denied, because if you don't have a PMDC license, you've not done house job. One more thing is about duration for students. If you're a student and you ask for 3 months, you're going to reject it, because officer will say, what kind of student you are? You're going to be off from medical school for 3 months. So if you're a student and you're asking for rotation, please just stay 30 days. Thank you.
Thanks for the work. And as you mentioned, it's important that you have your PMDC license. But recently, this was also brought up, they ask you, do you have your license? And you explain what type of license you have. Again, you don't have to churn out more information than it's required. even if you have a provisional license, you don't have to say I have a provisional license and I will get a full license later. You just say I have a license, because once you're done with your graduation and you're doing your house job, you get a provisional license. That's a good license, and it is a medical license. So if he asks you, the visa officer asks you, do you have a license? Even if you have provisional license, say yes, I have a license. And I don't think they're going to ask you about what type of license you have and things like that. And I've known people who have said, I have a provisional license, and then their visa was rejected because they said, oh, you don't have a full license. Come back when you have a full license. So if he asks you about license, if you have a license, please say, yes, I have a license. And again, I want to encourage everyone to raise their hands. We'll try to promote you guys as panelists, and we can ask your questions. The next question we're going to ask is
But
from...
just one point. But if you do have a full license, then do tell that I have a
Yes.
full license. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So,
And
Shriram,
just
quick
to add,
question.
always
Go ahead,
have a
Amar.
copy of your license available, because they do ask to see it a lot of times as well. So if you don't have the original, at least have a copy. And also, guys, keep your provisional license active. So as soon as you graduate, you have your provisional license for like 1 year, but you just need to go on the PMDC website to keep renewing it, and even in its provisional state. Make sure you have some form of licensure in Pakistan that's active.
All right. Thanks, Manu.
All right,
And we
Abdullah,
do
did
have a
that-
list of
Sorry,
documents that you should take on your visa day. And I think Usman volunteered, and he shared me this documents that he created. There's like a list of 20 documents that you should carry with you. We can share this on our website. We don't really have to go through this one by one, but we'll share it on Appna YPC Facebook page, so you guys can go through this and make sure you have those documents with you. It says that you should have your ECFMG certificate and USMLE score reports and the PMDC license and things like that. So we'll post this on our website. So please go through this. And if you have any further questions about that, you can ask us over there. And Umar Bhai, did you have a comment?
Yes, Abdullah, did that answer your question, or do you have any other questions?
Well, yes, I would like to add some information regarding DS-160 form. What I think most of our students or our colleagues does not mention a descriptive DS-160. When they have to write the job description, just simply write, I'm a medical officer in a blah, blah, blah place. I think we should be more descriptive in our job descriptions, and we should be, because they sometimes, and most of the times, they do read our D60 job description. So they should get an elaborative idea of what we are doing here in Pakistan.
All right, thanks for your comment. Next question, we have Abdul Rafi. If you can unmute yourself and ask your question, Abdul Rafi.
Can you hear me?
Your voice is breaking up, but
Hello.
can you say that again?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
I wanted to ask that why has there been such a high rejection rate these days in acquiring visa for observerships, and has this been only a problem for medical students or other non-medical people as well?
All right, thanks, Abdul Rafi. Fateh Bhai, if you can answer this question, please.
I think, Fateh Bhai,
I'm so
you need to
sorry. Can
unmute
you
yourself.
repeat that question? I'm actually getting some text
The
message.
question is like why there's such a high rate of rejections of visa this year.
Yeah. Actually, this is what always we say, that bad news makes a news, or bad things make a news. So there are many accepted too. So you don't hear about that. People who get visa, they don't even mention. But I will say it's not more than 50%, because I deal with both sides. There are many get accepted, especially these days. Everybody's getting multiple entry visa. So don't get disheartened. It's all depends on how you present yourself on the day of interview. That's most important. And most of the time I do prepare, and Umar keeps telling me that I should make a video, and I will do that. But I try to do one-to-one, and sometimes I can't do. Sometimes I get a little bit upset with people because I request them to send me DS-160 confirmation page. That actually gives me your location, your A number, your little bit information. And sometimes people say, why do you need that? So that turns me off, because what would I do with your DS-160 confirmation page? Sometimes people will mark their passport number, delete their date of birth. So these are things that you don't do. If you're asking somebody for a favor, don't hide that information. Nobody can do anything with your passport number. What can I do? Make your passport, new one, what I will do with that passport. So be respectful to others who are helping you. I try my best, but sometimes you have to be respectful to the other person. If I'm asking something that's for some reason, I'm not asking any information just for fun of it. So asking question, why do you need it? I can't share because private information, then don't contact me.
Thanks, Fateh. And thanks for your
Sharon,
patience. You've been doing this over the course of many years, and I don't know if all of us will be that patient as you are. And again, thank you for the wonderful work that you have been doing over the many years now.
Thank you.
Sharon, can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
So, guys, you need to understand why you feel like there is an increased rejection rate lately. So the issue was, this has been happening for decades. When I was a student in 2009, when we applied, there were a lot of my classmates who applied for electives. They got accepted. They got the visa based on electives, but they never went for electives. You know, the issue was that a lot of times people will be applying for B1, B2 visa for residency interviews at that time, right? Last year we had virtual interviews. So for that reason, when you apply for, sometimes it would get rejected and people won't be able to go for the interviews. The way people came around it was, okay, apply for electives and then get your visa based on electives and don't go for electives. So at that time it worked. But then everybody started doing electives, and the people who did electives, they stood out and they got residencies, and people who weren't doing electives didn't didn't get visa, didn't get residency. So that became a thing. Now the problem is, a lot of you guys, I'm sorry to say this, a lot of you guys are applying for observerships, are applying for electives, and then you don't show up, and you're not even informing the programs that, oh, just an FYI, I got the visa based on your letter, but I'm not going to come. What that has done is that has made embassy really skeptical of you guys as applicants, that you're applying for visas based on a letter for an observership and electives. They're very skeptical if you will really go or not. So you have to convince them that you value this experience and you will go. Because this has been going on chronically for the past 2-3 decades, now that's the visa rejection rate is definitely more than 2010, 2005 than what it is now. Now you have to justify for your case better as compared to, let's say, 90s. Thank you.
Thanks, Umar. And one
just
other
to add
important
on,
point
sorry, Sharam, sorry to cut you off. Just to add on what Omar said, that these things are reported. You know, the people you do observership, some of them, not all of them, do write emails to the embassy that we wrote this letter for this student and he did not come and join the observership. So that might not affect you as a person, but it may affect people who will apply in future. Another part, the question was why rejection rate is so high, and because of the applications are more. You know, there is at least 1,500, 2,000 B1 visas every year applied. They used to be 300-400. So you hear a lot that many visas are rejected because number is more. At the same time, those who got their visas, their number is quite improved too. Especially they're getting multi-entry visa, mostly because they want to cut their number for interview. So if they give you for 5 years, you're not going to show up for B1 visa for 5 years. That's the theory behind giving you multiple entry visa, which is very good for you all.
All right, thanks for the way. So just to summarize, there are two components to this, right? One is the component that's beyond our control, the relationship between the countries and things like that. There's nothing you can do about that. But at least we should focus and stick to the point that we can do. And one important thing that we as a nation need to realize is that we are not honest and we're not truthful. What's happening is that you're getting, observership letters and you're getting your visas on the observership letters. And then your friends are copying those observership letters and tampering with them and applying based on those observership letters. And that becomes a problem. Recently, we have heard there are some observership letters that are being denied and rejected because so many people have copied those letters and applied for observerships and applied for visa on that basis. So us as a nation, I don't know, as a nation or as a community, we need to be more truthful. Like, for example, if someone, the responsibility is two-part. So if I'm giving you a letter that is just for you, Once you get your visa, you should not share that with your friends. And secondly, your friends should be, cautious enough that they should not use the same letter. They can, if they really have to have a letter as a template to be used for the others, that's okay. But they should not use my name as a letter to apply for visa. Because what happens is, then most of the visa officers, my name gets recognized, and they say, hey, this guy is sending observerships to this many people every month, and that doesn't work. All right.
Sharam, can I make a quick housekeeping comment? So attendees, I see there are 12 of you with your virtual hand raised. So I'm going to take 2 or 3 at a time. I'm going to promote you as panelists. Then please switch on your video and raise your hand again once you're a panelist. And then Sharam is going to take you for questions. Sharam, please go ahead.
Thanks. Next question is going to be Arhama Zahra. You can ask your question, Arhama. Please unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
So I did have a conversation with Dr. Fateh Shahzad about this, but I just wanted to follow up and have like more clarity on this. I'm a graduate of 2021, and I got my visit visa back in December, beginning of December. I got my B1, B2, and then after I got my B1, B2, I got married to a US citizen. So right now I'm in US. I travel to US for my observership on my B1, B2, and the observership I'm doing currently right now. My question was that a lot of people suggested me to go for status change from here, including Dr. Fateh Shahzad. I did refer to a lawyer who told me that there is a 90-day condition that I need to fulfill and then be able to apply for my change of status. So that falls in August. If I apply in August for my change of status, my EAD would come around March or April. Now, what concerns me is that I will be applying for match this year, inshallah. And I am really confused as to whether my EAD, like what if my EAD gets delayed just in case, like for any unforeseen reasons. How do I go about applying during this match cycle so that I may be safe in terms of, that my EAD would be there, or if I have to go for J1, like what do you guys suggest how I should apply for the match and the visa?
Thanks, Arhama. Yes, there's been a little delay. I've had known people who have applied for EAD this year. There's been a little delay than the prior years. The EAD currently, to the best of my knowledge, is coming in 7 to 8 months time, 6 to 7 months time. So if you apply in August, you should be safe. I don't think there could be any problem because they're not going to take more than 1 year for you to have your EAD, because sometimes EAD even comes in a couple of months time, to be honest. Like there are a couple of my friends who applied for their spouses and the EAD was back in a couple of months time. And I do feel that's a safer route for you, but I will let Dr. Fateh chime in as well if he has more comments about that.
Yes, Arma, you will get by that time EAD, but just in case if it does not come on time, you should try to prioritize the program which offer H1, because once you apply for immigration, you will not get J1 visa, but you can get H1. So try to put those on the higher rank when you rank it, but don't mention to the program that you will be requiring visa, because the chances for interview are higher if you mark that you are not visa requiring applicant. So just mark you're not visa requiring in case it does happen that you don't get EAD on time, which is going to be almost for sure that you'll get it before July 1st. But you should try to put those program for H1 on J1 offering programs.
But then also a comment, Sharam, because we dealt with this situation. I was in a similar situation. My wife was going through the exact same thing. I 100% agree. Change of status is better. 90-day rule is because they want to make sure that, there is a 30, 60, 90 rule. Just Google it. It's a little complicated. But for you, the most important thing is to know that you cannot go for J1. Remember, we talked about immigration visa, immigration intent, non-immigration intent, and dual intent. You already applied for immigration. You cannot go for a B1, B2, or an F1 or any of those, because those are non-immigration intent. So that is one thing. That's why H1 comes in, because it's a dual intent visa. So that is one thing. And then there are certain programs who might ask you that we want to know by Feb if your paperwork is done or not. We had to pull out of the match because our paperwork was not done by Feb. But this year, I know two people who were in your situation last year. You're from Dow 2021, right? Yeah. So Aimcaana, probably your classmate. You know, she was in that situation too. So,
she was.
right. So her thing paper came in time, and she's able to start her residency. So just be mindful of that. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Just a follow-up question. If I do rank places with H1 above like on top of my list, it's just a naive question that does that make it difficult for me to match, because I do know that H1 programs are like more challenging to match to. Will that affect my chances of matching in any way, or like my chances of getting interviews in any way?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you
It
so
will be
much.
challenging, but it won't be impossible. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question we'll take from Mohammed Zubair. Please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum. I would like to communicate in Urdu. See, ऐसे है कि मेरा ना वीजा था 30 जून को वीजा इंटरव्यू था, तो मेरे दो क्वेश्चन है। तो मैं पहले की ये कि मैं ना इंग्लिश में इतना फ्लुएंट नहीं हूँ, दूसरे नंबर पे मुझे स्टटिंग भी है, और जब इंग्लिश में मैं बात करता हूँ तो मेरी क्योंकि एक लैंग्वेज से दूसरी लैंग्वेज में होते हुए तो मुझे स्टटिंग ज्यादा होती है। तो मैं ये पूछना चाहता हूँ कि 13 जून को जब मेरा इंटरव्यू था ना, तो वीजा ऑफिसर ने मेरा इंटरव्यू सही जा रहा था, लाइक जो है ना, तो बीच में उसने मुझे कहा कि वेयर इज योर, मतलब उसने पहले पूछा भी आपने क्यों जा रहे हो, तो मैंने अप्लाई किया था ऑब्जर्वरशिप की बेस पे और साथ में स्टेप 3 का था। तो उसने मेरे से स्टेप 1 स्टेप 2 की रिपोर्ट मांगी, वो मैंने दे दी। उसने मुझे कहा कि जी आपकी पाकिस्तान में क्या करते हो, तो मैंने कहा मैं मेडिकल ऑफिसर के तौर पे जॉब करता हूँ। तो उन्होंने मेरा जॉब का लेटर मांगा, वो मैंने दे दिया। तो फिर उसके बाद उसने मुझे कहा कि वेयर इज योर अपीयरेंस, तो कुछ इस टाइप का उन्होंने कहा। उससे पहले उन्होंने मुझे कहा कि आर यू मैरिड, पहले आपने अमेरिका विजिट किया, तो इस टाइप। तो मैंने कहा कि वेयर इज योर अपीयरेंस, तो मैंने कहा कि आई एम सॉरी, आई couldn't understand, can you rephrase your sentence? तो उन्होंने मुझे कहा कि आपके पेरेंट्स कहाँ पे हैं, तो फिर मतलब योर मॉम एंड फादर, इस तरह। तो मैंने उन्हें कहा कि भाई मेरे पेरेंट्स जो है वो पाकिस्तान में है। तो फिर उन्होंने मुझे कहा कि भाई वो क्या करते हैं, तो मैंने कहा कि भाई मेरी मदर जो है वो हाउस वाइफ है, और मेरे फादर जो है वो रिटायर्ड गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसर है, रिटायर्ड गवर्नमेंट से सर्वेंट है, बट अभी वो कुछ नहीं कर रहे, वो मतलब घर में रहते हैं। बस ये बात थी, तो उन्होंने वीजा फॉर येलो स्लिप दे दी मुझे, लाइक जो है ना। तो बस मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि एक तो ये कि जो वीजा इंटरव्यू होता है उसमें लैंग्वेज का कुछ तो नहीं होता है कि अगर मैं इंग्लिश की बजाय उर्दू चूज कर लूँ नेक्स्ट टाइम अप्लाई करने में। और सेकेंडली ये कि मैं अगर स्पॉन्सरशिप में जो है वो, पहले तो मैंने अपने आप को स्पॉन्सर किया था, तो उस पर भी मैंने अपना वो जो भी मांगा मैंने दिया। बट अब अगर मैं अपने बड़े भाई को स्पॉन्सर कर लूँ, वो डॉक्टर हैं इधर पाकिस्तान में। तो बस ये मेरे दो सवाल हैं। बहुत शुक्रिया जी।
Thank you for the question. Fateh bhai, if you want to answer this question.
Sure. Zubair, I remember you. So the issue is you're a medical doctor, and you can come and do observership here. So you'll be communicating with the people who speak English. So that does not do very well if you choose Urdu. Now, if you are just visiting for tourism, that's okay. But you're going to communicate with your staff here, patients. So you must pick English. And try to do practice. I know it's a problem, but you should try to do practice. Do with friends, talk to yourself in front of a mirror, and Umar can guide you better on that. And just tell them, when you go for an interview, say, officer, please, I would like to know that I have a medical condition that I stutter. That's simple. And my stuttering gets worse when I'm under stress, and this is during interview. And try to resolve that issue, because it's not just for a visa interview, it's going to be with your other interviews when you go for residency. So, and that will be all in English. So try to learn to speak English, take courses, whatever it requires. That's very important. And second part of your question about brother, anybody can sponsor you. Now, what people do, and be mindful that the U.S. Embassy or U.S. State Department has access to every bank account. They can pull their record. So sometimes people do is they put 10 million rupees in an account, borrow from somebody, get a statement, then pull the money out. So that's no, because they will find out that you've just put money, borrowed from somebody and took it out. So if you want to borrow some money, at least keep the money in your account till you got your visa stamped. Otherwise, that will be considered, kind of you're trying to trick them. Anybody can be sponsored, get their information, get the job letter, their pay slip, and a what we call stamp paper signed. What we call over here is a under oath, some kind of statement that he or she will be sponsoring you for this visit up to this amount. And that amount should be available either from their income or from their bank statements.
Yeah. Thanks for the back. Yeah. So generally speaking, it is recommended that whoever is sponsoring you, if you are sponsoring yourself, the money should be in your account. For example, it should not be like a chunk of money that came a couple of months ago and that's it. And before that, your account was close to zero. So that's a big red flag. What I generally recommend is, like, if you are sponsoring yourself and you have been working in Pakistan, you have decent amount of money in your account over the course of many years, that's great. You can just add a little bit more money slowly and then show that you are sponsoring yourself. Otherwise, it could be a co-sponsor. You should show the statement that you have, and whoever is sponsoring you, you should show their statement with the affidavit letter, like, this amount of money I have in my account, and I have a co-sponsor, and this is that person, my brother or my sister or my father or whoever it is, and give them a letter. Instead of getting money from them to your account in the last couple of months, and then you send them back the money before even you had your visa interview. As you said, that's a big red flag. And regarding your other part of the question, Umar bhai, if you have a comment and you want to chime in before we take more questions.
Sure. So I have a YouTube video on how to improve your English communication skills. See, English has four, like any kind of communication with the language, has four different components. I'm not going to go into depth of that because of the limitation of time. We already have 15 attendees waiting to get their questions answered. So I will be very brief. Watch that video and I'll share the link to that video in the chat as well. So basically the four components, right? Speaking, writing, reading, listening. So just practice those components. For speaking, I think the most important thing is the first step to get better with talking is to learn how to speak wrong English comfortably. And then eventually you will build upon it and get comfortable. And then, all these things. So just watch that video. I talk about in detail on how to improve your English communication skills. And I personally know at least five to six different candidates in past decade who were facing this, who went enmeshed for 2 to 3 match cycles, and they eventually improved their English and they matched. So I'm not even worried about visa for you. I'm more worried about your residency interviews. If you're not able to communicate effectively for your visa, there's no way you will be able to communicate effectively for your residency interviews, and you will go unmatched. So work on this now for your visa interview so that you can perform better later in the residency interview as well. So Sharam, for the past, Manur has her hand raised for quite some time. So we will take her comment and then we can go back to applicants with questions.
So thank you for that. I wanted to add something else, right? Like, imagine finally you get your B1, B2, you get to go for rotations. So I know, like, we already covered the fact that, like, you want to do everything possible, rotation, step 3 in the same visit. But if you look at the bigger picture, it's better to go in many small visits than one long visit. Don't stretch it out too much. Ideally, don't stretch any one visit beyond 3 months if possible. Another thing to keep in mind is that you will be applying for a visa again. Maybe you'll need another B1, B2, or ultimately, if you matched, you'll be there for a J1, H1 application. So everything you do during your rotations, like that, you should have, like, I personally think the best thing is to have like a paper trail, like have a bank account. It's easier to use a US card in the US. So like as soon as you reach there, open a US account and try to keep everything that you pay for try to pay for it on card instead. Like it's a debit card, right? It's not complicated. Anybody can get it, but try to have like a record of your entire spending during every rotation. I've personally known a lot of people who were asked during the time of their J1, like what they did and how did they finance themselves for their rotations on their B1, B2. So if you have like a record from a reputable bank explaining everything that you did, like everything's already on there, it helps you a lot more. I know as Pakistanis, like we usually take cash with us and we tend to spend cash, but it's better to just always keep in mind anything you're doing on your B1, B2, that like you have to justify everything you did in the US when you ultimately go for your J1 interview. If you do a rotation, get a letter from them to say you completed this rotation in this place from this date. If you spend money, have a card that shows you spent it here and over this time, so that when you ultimately go for J1, it'll be easier to get that as well.
I would like to
Thank you.
add things what Manur said. If you bring money, which you are allowed to bring money, please let the immigration officer know you're bringing $2,000, $3,000, because that will be on record. And as Manur said, open an account and use that through the debit card. Now, if you borrow money from somebody here, that's tricky. If you get it transferred through the bank, that may be considered as a payment for any kind of work. So if you borrow money, then just get cash and use as a cash. Don't put in the bank. What you did not bring with you, do not put that money in the bank, because if you brought 5,000, now your bank account is 10,000. That means somebody paid you in US. That will be considered you're working here and getting paid.
One last thing, whenever you use apps like Zelle or Venmo, always add the memo what you're transferring money for. And if somebody's even like, sometimes you'll go out with friends over here and one person will pay everybody else, always have them add the memo as well. No money coming in or out of your account should be there without the purpose and writing right then and there.
Thanks for the way. Thanks,
Second,
Manu. We'll take few more.
one more part,
Sure.
because she mentioned about paying bills. So there are two girls right now, their visa is stuck for J1 because they came on a legal visa and they stayed here for the duration that they were allowed to. But one of them delivered a baby here, which is okay to deliver a baby here, but she went back without paying the bill. So her visa is still on hold. So she got somebody, her in-laws, to pay the bill, and it takes time and just leaves a bad taste on the visa officer that you're irresponsible. And please don't take this that they don't do a background check. If you've been here and you did not pay bill, or you did any criminal activity or unpaid bills for any reason, they have that record. And they will ask you, and then you can say, yes, I paid the bill, but they know you did not pay. So if you have not paid the bill and the visa officer asks you a question, say, I'm sorry, I forgot to pay, I didn't have cash, but I would like to pay that as soon as possible. So just be truthful. Any question they ask during interview, they know the exact answer. So try to be very, very truthful.
Thanks for the way. And since we're talking about the banks and things like that, I would also recommend, once you open a bank, I generally recommend Bank of America. It's easier to open up a Bank of America account. And once you do that, I would also recommend applying for a credit card. Even if they don't give you an open credit card, they might be able to give you a secured credit card. So what is a secured credit card is like, you'll have the amount of money that it's secured. For example, if you have $1,000 secured credit card, you'll have $1,000 in your account, but will use that $1,000 from your credit card. So it builds up your credit history. That's just a small tidbit, but we can talk more about that later. We'll ask a few more questions. I think we should, keep it in next 11-12 minutes. We should be done in, at 10:30 CST. So next question, Rami.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ramesh. I am a graduate of King Edward. I graduated in 2020. I have a full PMDC license, and I will get my ECFMD certificate in the next week. So now I have applied for my B1, B2 visa, and I have a regular appointment of October. But I want to travel to US in July, so I can at least work for a couple of months in US system before the ERAS application. The thing is, it's very hard to get regular dates these days. So I was thinking of applying an emergency request. So I wanted to know what should I state the purpose, because I have heard that they are not accepting even step 3 as an emergency. And the second part of the question is like, if I put my purpose of visit as like step 3 or observership, then what additional documents I should like attach with it so that my emergency request can get approved? And a third part of the question, does it affect my chances of getting my visa approved if it is on a regular appointment versus an emergency appointment?
All right, thanks, Amit. We generally don't recommend getting emergency appointment for your observership or your step 3. So emergency appointments are for emergency purposes. For example, if you have a J1, if you are working in a hospital, you're a resident. Sometimes you can apply because you have to come here and serve your patients, right? And if you're a spouse, you can apply for emergency because your husband is there. You don't want to live away from your family for many months. So those are generally the reasons that you can apply as emergency. Observership step 3 unfortunately do not fall under category, and we don't recommend you applying for those. Even if you get an appointment, once the visa officer is going to ask you, why did you apply for emergency appointment, and you're going to tell him step 3, he might reject your visa, and that actually affects you. Every time you get a rejection, next time you have to explain why you got a rejection. And if your rejection was that you applied for something that you shouldn't have applied for, then it leaves a bad taste. If your rejection was just for, okay, you're applying for step 3 and things like that, and you don't have enough ties, that's okay. You can make ties later. But if your rejection is for something that you were dishonest, that's a bad rejection. So I very strongly do not recommend. You can still match without observerships. You can still match without step 3. So please don't jeopardize your career just because you want to come to US quickly. We'll take few questions quickly.
Can I add a few things to this, Sharam?
Yes.
Yeah, nowadays the emergency for J1, H1 is almost 0. Emergency visa is, I don't know why people emergency visas are mostly for medical emergencies these days. And if you do think that you have an emergency, like Sharam mentioned few things, then you can't apply 30 days before your travel date. Sometimes people apply for emergency in March and they're traveling in September. So that's not emergency. So that's going to be rejected. I agree with Sharam. Do not apply for emergency these days for J1, H1 observership, or even for your residency. Even if your residency is going to start next week, it's not going to be awarded. And then it just leaves a bad taste. Only for medical emergencies, like you might have a spouse who's sick and you need to go join, or she needs to join you. Sometimes some parents come because the resident is having delivery next month. So they do allow in those cases emergency interviews, but it should be within 30 days of your travel date. Thank you.
Thanks for the break. Next question, we can ask Ahmed Hussain. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm Dr. Ahmed Hussain, and I have passed my step 1 in February 2022, and I've just done with my house job. I am a graduate of Punjab Medical College from Islamabad. I would like to ask some like typical questions which are asked these days, which are being asked these days on different forums regarding B1, B2 visa. But I guess there are general impressions on the answers on that. So I would like to take the expert opinions on that questions. So can I ask those questions one by one, or should I ask them right away and you will answer them one by one?
Just ask a couple of questions. We'll try to take as many questions as we can.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, I would like to ask a common question for the B1, B2 visa, that the step 3 permit versus the observership letter, which carries more weight and makes this case a stronger one. Like we have to approach both things combined. Like we should have the step 3 permit in hand and also the observership letter. Also, I would like to ask, is there a difference between the observership letter from a clinic versus the university hospital letter, which is like very tough these days. It is very difficult to get the university hospital letter these days. The third thing I would like to ask about the bank statement, its amount and the duration for which it should have been in your account, the amount, and what is the perfect amount or a like a good amount to show during your visa.
Okay. Right. We can answer those questions, and we have other candidates who are trying to ask questions
One
as well.
last question I have.
Sure.
I actually have passed my step 1, and the recent regular appointment I have for my B1, B2 visa is of February 2024. I would just like to ask if I should wait, like I should take my step 2 and be able to be the ECF50 certified, and so that I may apply on the basis of step 3 permit, or I should take a regular, should take an emergency appointment, so that if I might get refused, I should have a timeline to apply again for the visa next year, because I aim to apply for the 2025 match.
So let me answer the third part of your question first. You should not apply for emergency anyways. That we already discussed that. So no emergency appointment. Number one, step 1 versus step 3 versus observership, which is better? Traditionally, like over the course of many years, we have seen that step 3 generally has been a strong reason to come to US. If you have a step 3 exam and you have applied and you have paid money and all that, that's a strong tie to US just to come and give the exam. But if you have observership on top of that, definitely do both. But if you have to pick one, it doesn't matter. Observerships, people getting visa as well. Step 3, people getting visa. If you have step 3, of course, apply for step 3. If you have observerships, apply for observerships. If you have both, apply for both. Whichever is better, it's circumstances. If you have step 3, you should not wait for to apply, till you have observership letter. Apply on the basis of step 3. And if you have both, that's the best scenario.
Sure. Just like to add that for step 3, because it's a licensing exam, so you should all know it's a licensing exam. And if you are not licensed in Pakistan, which is again PMDC full license, step 3 will be rejected. So make sure if you're going for step 3 only, then you should be PMDC full licensed. And of course, you have done house job. As Shahram said, observership in step 3 is a good combination, but again, you should have your house job and full PMDC license. Exactly. The third part of your question about finances, at least 3 months before you have some funds and keep it in your account or somebody else's account, whoever is sponsoring you, amount, it should be able to cover your travel and lodging expenses. It depends on if you're going for 2 weeks for step 3, it might be lesser amount. If you're going to stay for 3 months, you need to have more amount, and just keep your the dollar PKR ratio. So have just ballpark some amount to cover your expenses. If you really want to know exact amount for 3 months, it should be like 20 lakh.
Yeah. And the third part of your question was about a letter from the university versus a clinic letter. So if you have a university letter, that's great, but it's hard to come by. But don't downplay the letters from the observership and clinics, things like that. That's the best people are getting these days. Those are the rotations that generally you will be able to get. So don't be disheartened that it's a observership letter from a community or like clinic. Most people that are getting visas these days are based on those observership letters. They are from the smaller clinic outpatient setting. So go ahead and apply based on those letters. If you have university, definitely, then it's not even a question whether we should apply for university versus outpatient clinic. Definitely university is better. But if you don't have it, then what are you going to do? So apply based on what you have. Umar Bhai, you had a comment?
For elective, before Umar starts, for electives, it's a must to have from a program, university program with a residency program. So you should not apply if the place where you're going to do elective does not have a residency program. It's just for elective for students.
Yes, so electives definitely a university program, but for observerships, once you're graduated, then you can apply for both. You can apply with the letter from a clinic or a letter from a university. Umar Bhai, you had a comment?
Yes. So Ahmed, one thing, remember, when we are doing these webinars, it's impossible for us to do point by point answering all the questions, and there will be more than 100 questions. I hate to promote my channel, but I have at least 10 to 12 different visa guidance videos with each video of 10 to 20 minutes. I would urge each one of you that you should go to my website, medidia.com. It has record of more than 15 years of people applying for visa and sharing their reasons of rejections and acceptance. I would say read those experiences, read the comments, read why people were rejected. The pattern is always the same. And listen to, again, I'm not promoting myself. It's not for my sake. It's more for your sake. Listen to the videos that I made. What are the top reasons for getting visa rejections? How you should prepare for your visa interview. What are the different types of visas? These are the redundant questions that we have been answering for decades now. And if you don't know the answer to these questions, that just shows that you haven't done your homework. The problem is a lot of these applicants are not doing their homework without realizing what home ties are, without realizing how much money you need to have in your bank account. Very basic thing. Right now in just YouTube chat, somebody asked me, my brother is not a doctor, but can he offer me a letter for observership? You know, it just shows that that's the level of ignorance you have if you don't even know that only a doctor can offer you observership and you can use that letter, but you can still go visit your brother on the same B1, B2 visa. So please do your homework, read different posts on YPC Appna, go to my website medidia.com, go to my YouTube channel, Medidia, listen to all the visa guidance section, go to Appna's YouTube channel, listen to all the visa guidance videos, and then ask questions, you know, do your homework. Now, in the interest of time, it is impossible for us to do, I see we have 10 people with questions and in Q&A we have 50. So what I will do is, Shahram is going to take a last question from Omar Mukhtar, and then I'll very quickly try to answer all the questions in the Q&A chat. Go ahead.
Yes, and the final part of the question was, as we answered, like how much money we should have. The more the merrier. Like if you have a lot of money, yes, put it in an account and show a statement. But the question is about bare minimum. Yes, bare minimum should be more than 20 lakhs, things like that. But if you have more, put more money in the account. Yes, the next question would be from Omar, and then we'll try to answer some of the questions on the Q&A. Omar, you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Manu. Hello, everyone. My name is Omar. I got my visa approved as a medical student, and I wanted to share some stuff with you guys here today, especially the students, the final year medical students. So the thing is, the way that I got my visa approved, it was quite an adventure for me. But this is what I would say to the students that are in final year right now. So when you enter final year, fill the DS-160 form as soon as you can. And after you have filled the form, schedule a visa interview date. The thing is, you need to schedule the interview date at least 1 year back, because that's how long the wait is, right? I didn't schedule my date in time, so it was quite hectic for me at the end to schedule an interview date. After you have scheduled an interview date, try applying at every place that you can find. And if you can afford, try to apply for an paid elective as well. It is going to pay back in the long term. And the thing that the other doctors mentioned as well, prepare for the visa interview. Don't take it lightly. Be confident, be truthful, yet tactful at the same time. And you're not doing anything wrong. You're not defrauding anyone. And so if you have any other questions, let us know and we'll help you guys. Other than that, I want to thank Dr. Fateh Shahzad. He was very helpful throughout this process. Thanks a lot. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Now we'll take some questions. We have a few minutes. We'll pick up some questions from the Q&A. So first question is from Momina. So my husband is in America, and basically the crux of the question is that she has been waiting for the spouse visa for the past 2.5 years, and now she has got an appointment for a B1, B2 visa on observership basis, and she's confused because people are saying that she was suggested against it. So for that's a specific scenario. She has already applied for a spouse visa, but she's on wait list, and now she's applied for observership visa. How should we approach this? Like, how should she approach this?
No, the spouse visa based on, is she green card holder? So is
he's a US citizen. He's a US citizen.
So if it's immigrant visa, so he won't get B1.
Yeah.
Simple answer.
Yeah. So, what are the basis of rejections? As many are facing rejections these days on the basis of step 3. Some Mohammed Zohaib asked that some people are applying for step 3 and they are getting rejected. And I think we briefly mentioned that if you don't have your ECFMG certificate from like the home, if you don't have your PMDC license, then don't apply for step 3 because that's a licensing exam. Can we go for an observership during internship in our home country? Will this be a strong reason for coming back to home country? So observership during your internship in your home country. So if you are doing your house job and you're coming here for observership, yes, that's a valid reason. You have already graduated and you can come as an observer to US while you're doing your house job. And I would recommend, like, if you are in front of the visa offices, mention that you have an ongoing job. You have the responsibility to fulfill this job. So it gives you a strong tie to come back to US actually. So generally we recommend that people who have jobs, when they apply for observerships, should have jobs in Pakistan, and they should take their job letters, for example, house job letter, and tell them that I am required to come back to Pakistan to complete my house job. So that gives you a strong reason to come back to US, and that's a valid reason.
Can I add a little bit more?
Yes.
So when you're going for B1, B2, I just keep adding things so we don't forget. If you are engaged or married or have kids, please do mention that during interview, even if they don't ask. That will show strong ties with Pakistan. If you have a child or you have a wife or husband who is in Pakistan, so that's a strong tie that you will come back. So during interview, try to bring that up, that I'm married, I have a husband, I have a child, or any other reason that you will come back. Maybe a parent who needs help. So mention those things that show with your job and with your ability to practice medicine in Pakistan, like having full license. Always mention those things during your interview for B1. They're not important for J1 and H1.
Thanks for the way. So there's a question that Larev asked, and this question has been a recurring theme, and many people have asked this question in the past as well because people are confused about the answer. So, for example, if you're going for a B1, B2 visa and they ask you, are you going to apply for residency in US? And I've heard people who said they are not going to apply for residency in US and their visa was rejected. So please make sure that you should answer that yes, you are going to apply for US residency. That's the whole reason that you are doing your observership. But that's not an immigration intent. You don't have to specify that you want to live in US. You can be very clear that you want to apply for US visa because you want to train in US. So training in US is not an immigration intent. You can still train and go back to Pakistan. So you don't have to say that I'm going to live in US, that's why I'm coming here for observership. No, you're coming here for observership because you want to improve your experience, and afterwards you want to apply for residency. And your residency, generally speaking, is to improve your medical career. Like, you want to improve yourself as a physician, you want to get the best possible training you can. And US definitely is one of the places where you get the best training in the world. So that's why you're coming to US. You're not coming to US to stay here. You're coming to US to get the best possible training. You should emphasize on that in your visa interview. Yes, if you are coming here on residency or H1 visa, it's a dual intent visa, but you still don't have to say that, yes, you will stay in US. You can still say, yes, it's a H1 visa. This is what my program offered me, but I would like to go back to my country. That's okay. That's a valid answer. So please do mention that you're coming here for residency and you want to do residency because you want to get the best possible training.
Just to add a little bit to that, this is a very tactical question, the way you should answer, because just keep in mind that the interviewing officer, there is no audit on the refusal. Person can refuse 100 visas, but if there's one visa accepted, that goes under audit. So they have to fulfill all the requirement for non-immigrant visa. So one of that requirement is intent to return. So the way Shahram mentioned, so this question has two parts. First part, you should say that I am, and this is the time to bring those things back. I'm fully licensed in Pakistan. I've done my house job, or I'm doing my house job, or I'm working as a medical officer in this place, and I'm going for this observership to enhance my knowledge, as US has the best healthcare system. that will improve my patient care in Pakistan. So that shows your intent to come back. And then you can add to, because he or she knows that you're coming to apply for residencies. Then you can say, also I have a dream, I have a goal to go in future to get medical training. Don't say residency, just go for medical training. Again, because US is the best healthcare system, and that will help me provide better patient care in Pakistan. So intent is to come back, but at the same time, you satisfy him and seem that you're telling the truth, that you eventually you might do residency in US, and that is perfect answer for that.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bhai. Umar Bhai, if you have selected some questions and you would like to answer.
Sure. Let me do that. I'm looking at some questions. Muhammad Zuhaib is, I'll quickly go over most of them. Muhammad Zuhaib is saying, what are the bases of rejection, as many are facing rejections these days, even on the basis of step 3. We already answered that. People are poorly prepared. They're not presenting their case well. They're not doing their homework well. So please listen to all the videos. I shared the playlist. I shared the link to my website. Read all the posts of people who have been accepted. So you will gain this knowledge by talking to people who have been accepted. It's impossible to talk to hundreds of people, but it is possible to watch their videos, read about their experiences, and learn from them. And then I'll request Abdullah Imtiaz to share his experience of rejection. We can't do that in the interest of time, but I'll tell you that a lot of times, based on my experience of doing this more than a decade, there's always something wrong. People mess up. Somebody I know who applied for visa, like I said, without job experience. Somebody else who applied for B1, B2 and mentioned that they plan on staying in US forever. Somebody who said, I plan on doing residency and fellowship, and probably if I find an attending job, I plan on staying in US forever. These are all tricky answers. You have tough time justifying them. So the way you can go around them is to just say what Fateh Bhai was saying, I am going there for training and I plan to come back to my home country in the long run. My eventual plan is to come back. You can't say that I'm going to stay in US for the next 30 years. The plan is to get the best training possible and serve my own home country. Unless you're applying for a green card, then you got to know in your own head, am I applying for this non-immigration intent or immigration intent visa? And then answer the questions accordingly. So Anam Naqvi is saying, can we go on for an observership during internship? And we already answered that. Anonymous attendee is asking, I'm a final year student, want to go for electives. My B1, B2 visa got denied after they put me on administrative processing. I have my interview in July. I want to do electives in August. I'll graduate in March 2023. I'm scared of another rejection. What should I do? Dua kijiye. And do your homework well, prepare well, read all the posts for visa rejection. I have a specific video that if your visa has been rejected multiple times, what you should do, please watch that video. Is it important to have a university or hospital? Please go ahead.
Sorry. You said they graduate in March 2023 and the interview is in July, rotations in August. So they can't do the elective anymore, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, if you're graduating before elective, then you can't do that. You have to do your elective before graduation. Thanks for picking that up, Manu. The next one is I've heard that visa rejection rate is higher in Karachi as compared to Islamabad. I don't think there's any way to prove either one. The next one is it important to have a university or hospital letter? Yeah, it does make sense. The reason is that clinics are notorious. There are clinics I know that have offered 25 to 50 visa sponsorship letters per month. And they're charging anywhere from $100 to $200 to give you that letter. People have made a business out of it. Me or Fateh Bhai or any one of us, we can start doing that. That really makes embassy question the credibility and authenticity of those clinics offering these visa letters. And then half of those people, they don't even show up. So we do get audited that, okay, Dr. Tariq offers 50 letters per month and only 5 of them come to US. The rest come to US 2-3 years later. So please know that. So that's the reason. It's not that there is something wrong with the clinic experience. It's what has been happening for the past decade. They audited it and they found the answer. Next one is, I have been advised by many people to mention minimum duration in your DS 160. It increases chances of visa approval. I've mentioned 1 month duration, but I will be doing observership as well as be taking my step 3. So I'm planning on staying for at least 3 months. Would that be a problem? I previously failed 4 months and my visa got rejected. You got to be honest. If you're going to stay in US for 3 months, 2-month visa observership and step 3, please don't lie. None of us here are going to tell you to lie. So please don't lie, be honest, and just make sure you have a paper trail to prove everything. You should have letters of acceptances and step 3 exam scheduled, all that stuff.
Yeah, I want to make a comment that
please.
generally speaking, as we had initially said as well, like sometimes it just depends on the mood of the visa officer. No one can fault them for refusing the visa. For example, they might be questioned for approving someone who has fishy circumstances. For example, they had some fishy ties, and someone's going to ask them, "Oh, why you approve this person's visa?" But no one in the State Department is going to ask a visa officer like, "Why didn't you approve this guy's visa?"
Right.
So for them to reject is easy. So I don't want you guys to be disheartened in a sense. Oh, applied for a 4-month duration and my visa got rejected. Apply again with 4-month duration. So the duration in your application is not a do or die matter that they're going to give you visa or deny you visa based on what you have put in your application, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. Be honest. If you have a 4-month observerships lined up, say I'm going to stay here for 4 months. If you're coming for step 3, you need at least like a month or month and a half to prepare for step 3. You can prepare at home country as well, but you can make a case that, oh, I'm going to go there, I'm going to prepare for my step 3, and I'm going to give my step 3, and I have my observership. So you can apply for 3, 4, 5-month duration. I don't want to get this idea that because you got rejected for some reason, at some point, you cannot apply again for the same reason. If it was a definite red flag, for example, you applied for step 3 and you don't have a license in home country, yes, then you should not do that again. You should get license and then apply for step 3. But generally speaking, duration does not matter as much, especially 1, 2, 3, 4 months time. So please be careful about that.
So you want me to continue? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we can continue. There are some questions that I've selected, but yeah, you continue.
Okay, I'll try to answer them quickly, and then you guys can chime in. The next one is my visa has been rejected, and I'll be reapplying. What should I do differently? Again, please watch my video on visa rejection. What to do next? If we are mentioning one letter details in DS-160, and later we go get an opportunity from New York for an observership, is it a red flag to go there, or we can't? You should go. And then make sure some people have gone to the port of entry or, the nearby airport. We mentioned that it's an overkill. Just make sure you have documents and you honestly, truthfully explain your circumstances. The issue is when you deliberately lie, they figure it out that you lied to them. Things happen. As long as you're honest, you should be fine. How to overcome the difficulty for visa interview date and an emergency request. We talked about it. You shouldn't be doing emergency requests. Appna is here. We can facilitate. We can't make things happen, but we can facilitate. If you're having an issue with the interview date and you want to come for an elective or observership or residency, please reach out to Dr. Fateh Shahzad or anywhere else in Appna, and we will try our best to help you. Lareeb is asked.
Sorry, just to add to that, I feel like since COVID, the way interviews are scheduled have completely changed, right? Before, if you applied for a B1, B2 today, you'd get an appointment in a month's time max. So I think it's really important for anybody in this journey who's doing the USMLEs to plan in advance. And as long as you've planned well your rotations, your visa interviews, and take the exams in the meanwhile. It shouldn't be the other way around. The first you finish all the exams and then you start thinking about, oh, how do I get a visa? It's going to be a 1-year wait. So you've got to plan way in advance now.
Agreed, completely agreed.
Doctor, I'd like to add something. So the thing is, right now, scheduling a visa interview date, even through a broker, is quite hard. For example, I got an acceptance letter in February, right? And I spent almost 3 to 4 months trying to get a visa interview scheduled through various brokers, but I wasn't successful in doing that. So I think the best way to go about this is to schedule an interview date at least an year back as soon as possible. So when we say that plan it in time, we actually mean that plan it 1 year back. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Yeah, can I add to that part,
please,
the sticky part of not able to get through the agent or consultant? See, I kind of know the background of that. They have implemented artificial intelligence. So the VPN used to apply for DS-160 from the computer, if somebody accesses your account from a different computer, that kind of creates a problem. So they're having a hard time now. So they're aware of that people are getting through the agents. So now they've implemented that the VPN for your computer, when you did apply for DS-160 or submitted from, that should be used to look at or check your record or reapply. So that's why they're having a hard time getting it. And that's their remedy. But don't go and spread the word that you start giving your laptop to the agents.
Thank you for that.
Dr.
Lorraine
Shahzad,
is
I had the same issue where in the middle there was like a social media blockage in Pakistan, right? So I didn't realize my VPN was on my phone and I accessed my application and I got locked out of my account for like 5 days.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that.
Thank you. So Lorraine is asking next how to answer these questions for B1, B2. Why you want to do USMLE for the best training in the world? Are you going to apply for residency with us? I haven't made that decision yet. I might most likely just to get the best training and eventually come back and bring the skills and the knowledge to my home country. Also, is community invite letter sufficient enough to get accepted, or is university hospital necessary? You can get approved with both. The chances are higher with university hospital. Do we have to show bank statements and property if my mother is going to support my visit for electives? Yes, you need to show funds. Next, Anam is asking, I went to US for on B1, B2 for electives. While I was doing my electives, my results announced, and I was doing my elective. What should I say in my next interview date when I was graduated? The same thing. You started your, we're not going to tell you to lie. Tell them, though, no, the day I got my results, I quit. Just tell them that the result was announced in the middle of the electives, but you completed it because it's unprofessional, unethical to leave your rotation. So you completed and you went back to your home country. Okay, so Kiran is asking that I got letter of observership being an undergraduate. What are the chances that my visa will get accepted? Nobody can tell you, but you're an undergraduate. I would encourage you to get electives, but even observership. I have done observership as a third-year medical student. It works out. It's not the worst thing in the world. And if you're a third year or second year medical student doing observership in US, that really helps you get better electives as a final year or fourth year student. It really helped me. I got 12 acceptances and I did 8 out of them. Hassan Khalid is asking, would it be okay if we wanted to ask a question regarding the stay in US on B1, B2 visa? Does that fall under the umbrella of discussion we're having? We are already answered most of these questions. So next, Maz Asif is asking, if we apply for B1, B2 visa on the basis of observership in May 2024, should my visa be nearer to the date of observership? We would say, based on the discussion we are having, I'll say apply now, and then you get the visa, but you go close to the observership date. Like if your observership is in May, go in April. Don't go now for your observership in May. Okay.
So, Umar, there are so many questions that are redundant. I've selected some questions. I think we can answer those questions and go from there. And I've scanned through most of them. There's one important question that someone asked, like if they ask you about accommodation once I'm staying in US, should I mention a random address close to where I'm doing my observership? Please don't do that. I would recommend you find out an accommodation before you are applying for your visa, if you can. If you don't have an accommodation, they understand it takes time. You tell them, no, I don't have a set accommodation. I would try to find some accommodation based on the time that I get my visa. Because right now I'm not sure when I'll be able to land there. You can be honest. Don't just give a random address, because they can easily check whether you have had signed, or they can ask you, show me a lease contract. Then would you have a lease contract with that address? No, you wouldn't. Do you want to add anything else, Fateh bhai or Umar bhai?
I think you did it very well, this answer. Just don't lie. And they know, as I said earlier, if they ask you a question, they know the exact answer. So the best response to that will be, as soon as you get visa approved, I have looked few places around my hospital or my clinic, and I've narrowed down 2-3, and I will sign a contract, or I will do booking as soon as I get my visa. That's the best answer.
Thanks. There's another question someone asked, like I've already got my visa rejected twice, and should I apply one more time, or should I apply in the next year's match cycle? Again, applying in one match cycle does not necessarily decrease your chances of applying again. So if you have your application completed, just because you have not done your observerships, I would not recommend just waiting one more year to apply for residency. Again, observership is not a must. It's not like if you don't have observerships, you don't get matched in the US system. I would recommend applying this year as well, and then you can apply for visa next year again based on the observership letters you have. And Dr. Tariq, if you have any selected questions that you think we need to answer, otherwise I've seen most of the questions that we've already answered. People are asking those questions again and again. So if you have anything that you have selected, I have one more question.
Shamil is asking, I have a question. I live in Saudi Arabia. I need to apply for a J1 research scholar visa for a research training position at Mayo Clinic. I have a valid B1, B2 visa issued from Karachi back in 2021. Am I eligible for interview waiver from Karachi? Should I apply for from Karachi through the interview waiver process, or should I apply for through Saudi Arabia? Fateh, what's your take on this?
Yeah, he will have to go to Karachi, because for waiver, you can apply only in the consulate where your last visa was issued. So if he wants to go for interview in person, then he can go Jeddah or Riyadh. But for waiver, he will have to apply in Karachi.
Yeah. Thank you. A couple of questions. I think the last two questions that we selected, unless Umar Bhai, you have had any other question that you liked from the comments. One question is that I am not certified yet to apply. This is for Fatma Mahfouz, and to apply for step 3, but I've gotten a visa interview based on observership. Once I go to the US on observership, can I stay there to do step 3, or should I go step 3 in the same visit? Yes, if you're here for observerships and you have time and you want to give your step 3, you can go ahead and give your step 3. That shouldn't be a problem. Again, if you have valid reason of staying in US, even if someone asks you next time when you're applying for H1 or J1, like, why did you stay 3 months or as opposed to 1 month as in your application, you can easily say that, yes, I applied on the basis of observership, but then later on I had to give my step 3 as well. So I stayed a couple of more months for step 3. That's easy answer. I would say you should do that.
And if there is a chance that you might stay a little bit longer, just when you arrive, to tell the immigration officer that I applied based on observership, but I have now qualified or got my date for step 3. I would like to stay another month. But if you don't mention that, it's a little bit risky to stay longer. If you say I'm here for 30 days during visa interview, and say on an immigration officer, then you stay for 2 months, 3 months, that can cause problem in future.
Okay, thank you. Ali Hussain has asked a question that his visa was rejected because in January, because he did not have a university letter, and it clearly said come up with a university letter, but now he's applying for J1. Would that affect my case? No, that's a completely different visa. Your visa was rejected because you did not have enough ties or enough reasons to come to US, right? So in visa officer's mind, you didn't have enough of a reason to come to US, but now it's a separate application altogether. Now you have been selected on a residency spot and you're coming here for J1. Getting a rejection for B1, B2 should not affect your case. Again, right. That does not guarantee that you're going to get a J1 visa, but just because you were rejected B1, B2, because you didn't have sufficient evidence to come to US or sufficient case to come to US, that should not affect your case for H1 or J1 for that matter.
Correct.
And in the interest of time, I think we will like to wind up, unless you have any other questions, Umar Bhai or Fateh Bhai, that you want to answer before we say goodbye.
Just to clarify one thing, that the J1, H1, it's a good thing that it does not get rejected. Only it can go into administrative process that might take, these days, fortunately, they're taking 1 to 2 weeks, but it can take up to 6 months. So be prepared for that. Be patient. They will notify you. Don't keep calling me every day. I don't get notification, because just remember, visa is protected by law. So I don't get the detail. They can't share all your information with me or anybody else. Only you, or if you have an attorney. Those are only 2 people can be informed about your status and detail. And they do not inform even your attorney if your visa was rejected, or if it's an administrative process and why it's administrative process. Nobody knows except the security agencies. There was one more point about the J1 or H1, not H1, but J1 can only be rejected if you have, or somebody on your behalf has applied for immigrant visa for you. Like one of the girls is facing a problem. Her father did apply for immigration, and so her J1 was rejected because she has already shown immigration intent. Now, in that case, luckily her program offered H1, and she should go through that. H1 is dual intent, so she will get H1 inshallah. But J1, but if somebody has applied for you immigration, your husband, your parents, your brother, sister, so then try to go for H1. Don't waste your time with J1.
Yeah, and one other comment, like when we made, like, your visa might go into processing and you might have to wait for a few weeks time. And I understand people are very fearful and skeptical about that they are starting residency. But based on the past experiences, I was in the residency council in my residency, and we had like 110 residents throughout the DMC system, and I've been involved in the residency throughout that time for many years. Most programs would wait for you for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, even 6 months. Unless the program is very small or it's malignant, he might give someone else your spot within a few months' time. But generally speaking, as long as you are able to come to US within a few months' time, you're okay. And most of the time, you will be able to be done with your residency within 3 years period, because you have vacation time they can allocate. There are some rotations that are mandatory, few months, and there are some rotations that are supplementary on top of that. So even if you have not strictly completed the full quota of 3 years of rotation, as long as you have done mandatory rotation, you will still be able to graduate. For example, for residency, I'll tell you there are a couple of months of cardiology rotation, 6-7 months of in-flow rotations, couple of months of outpatient rotations, then ICU rotation for a few months' time, and then HEMOC and a couple of other rotations. As long as you're able to do those rotations, you'll still be able to graduate on time. And most programs, even if you are off cycle, they will still keep the spot for you, and you'll be able to still graduate maybe a couple of months later. It's very rare that you are rejected from a residency spot just because your visa was delayed. So be patient, and hard work, be patient, and hopefully your visa will come back within a couple of months' time, and you'll be able to start your residency and actually finish in time.
And don't rush to answer that. You might get an email that, we want to answer these questions. Some people try to answer while they're driving. So it's not emergency that you answer those email questions. There are 15, 16 questions. Be truthful, be complete. And if you need any question, please contact me. I'll be glad to help you review your answers before you submit. There is no time limit like you have to do within 5 minutes. You can do in a few days. So just make sure those answers are complete and they're accurate. And one more thing, that please clean your social media. Don't put any objectionable pictures. One guy, I just give example, he's done cardiology now, he's got waiver. So his visa was put on AP because he had his DP was with 2 Kalashnikov in his hand. So don't pick those kind of pictures. Wow. and any kind of band organization's name, any kind of religious comments, anti-Jews comments, anti-gays comments. Those things because they do look into your social media, even if you don't give access to them.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Shehzad. That's a very, very important point that you kind of mentioned at the very end. It's very important that you clean up. First of all, don't even put stuff like that on social media to begin with. If you are in the stages of early part of your career, especially, I guess you shouldn't do that ever in your life. Generally speaking, the questionable things, but especially when you're applying for residency, you shouldn't be commenting about this issues about LGBT and things like that. Because they are very sensitive about that issue, for example. That one issue. And secondly, you mentioned Kalashnikovs. I would say any gun, any explosive would do. So please don't post with any explosives at all. That again tells us like how naive we are sometimes. We think that if we don't give them access, they don't have access. They actually have access. They can look at your profile. So in the interest of time, we will close up. But a couple of points, if someone wants to make, I'll go one by one. Dr. Shehzad, if you have any parting comments before we finish this.
I want to thank Naman Ashraf and Umar Tariq Sharam, especially Manur. She's new, and I hope she will continue to work with us. I'm very, very proud of you and very thankful to you. You joined us because those who've gone through the recent experience of J1, B1, H1, they are the best resource because you can teach us actually. So all of you should volunteer your time. And one more thing, that please introduce yourself when you send a message or a voice message or text message. Sometimes it's like 1-page message, but don't tell who you are, where you live, where did you graduate, when did you graduate, and you want the answer. That sounds very disrespectful to the person you're communicating with. Introduce yourself first and then ask your question. Not even at the end. Ask question and then you introduce yourself at the end. Introduce yourself first and then ask, and try to be brief and because just respect these panelists that they have their family life, professional life, and I have a lot more things to do other than just visa. And I'm not attorney. I don't offer legal, although some people say my input is better than attorneys, but I'm not an attorney.
Thanks, Uday. Mahnur, you had some comments.
I just had one question for Dr. Shehzad. So like, people like me who just matched. So after the first year finishes, would you recommend that we go back to Pakistan like once a year, even though that means like having to get restamped?
You don't have to. Once you are on J1 or H1, you're allowed to stay for the duration of the program. Up to 6 years on H1 and up to 7 years on J1. You can even get further extension, but that you can stay as long as you have your DS 2019. You can work, stay, travel on that. You do not have to go. It does not help you to improve your future visa. It does not help you anyway to if you travel or you don't travel. If you travel, get your appointment for visa interview. Mostly you will get a visa interview waiver, and that may take up to 4 weeks. So if you're having 2 weeks vacation, you try to go in person interview. That might be done within 2 weeks, but in waiver most likely will take a little bit longer time. You still chance of getting administrative processing. So keep in that mind that you might your case might get into AP. Doesn't mean you didn't get to AP first time. It will not go to second time or third time, fourth time. Things can change. This is purely security reason, and even the officer does not know. When you go for interview and your case goes to AP, the actually screen gets blank, and he or she cannot edit anything, cannot tell you the reason. It goes back to the State Department, goes to FBI, CIA offices, and get clearance from 5 security agencies before, even including ISI. So that's a long process. So we try to expedite that, but again, getting clearance from 5 agencies, sometimes the longer time is from ISI. So just be patient and keep your record clean.
Thanks,
Okay.
Uday.
Thank you.
Usman, again, I want to thank you as well that you joined. You recently got
Yes.
your visa. You shared your experience. Thank you so much. If you have any other comments that you want to make before we close.
No, sir, but I just wanted to let some people know about the accommodation that recently we booked from bookings.com and got the emails printed out that if some they asked from some people that you have to show specific places where you are going to live. So we booked from where we are supposed to rotate, and we can book places from there. And then you can, when you can come back, come here in US, you can choose where you want to live.
Okay, thanks, Usman. Omar bhai?
Yeah, thank you.
parting
Thank you very much for having me. So guys, I would just, before we leave, I'm going to repeat that please do your homework. There's a lot of available data online on YouTube, on Appna Facebook page. Read about everybody who has, matched. Just Google visa acceptance from Pakistan. Read the links, Google's or Facebook search Appna visa acceptance. People have shared their experiences. Manur and Usman, for people like you who have their visa acceptance visa already accepted, please share your experiences. Go to the Facebook page, share your interview experience. For people who especially have had visa accepted after rejections, it's very important that you mention what do you think happened, why it was rejected, and what you did differently that got your visa accepted. So this is Satya Jariya that we have been doing. I got accepted for electives. I made a website out of it. Then as slowly when I was taking steps, I provided steps guidance, visa guidance, all that. And I learned that I became a better student and a better teacher at the same time because of doing this. So this is not just philanthropy. At the same time, this will help you go professionally when you're going for residency and fellowship interviews. So all the people who have had their visa accepted, residency interviews done, successfully matched, make sure that this system keeps on growing and you keep on helping your juniors. Share your experiences. If you are right now final year, help your third year, fourth year juniors, help them study for USMLEs. Keep the system going. Okay. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.
I want to thank all of my panelists at this point, especially Dr. Shehzad. You took out your time and for all the work that you've been doing for the past few years, many years, and helping the candidates. And again, on his behalf, I want to mention one more time, please be respectful of his time and don't send like long emails and long messages. Be very brief and ask your question. And again, he cannot guarantee that you're going to get a visa, or none of us can guarantee that you're going to get a visa. It's at the discretion of the state and at the discretion of the officer
Visa
that's
officer.
doing it. And I want to thank Umar Bhai. You've been doing a fantastic job on the YouTube channel that you've been doing, and especially at YPC as well. And thanks Mahnur for joining us. Thanks Usman for joining us. And Ahmed was here. Dr. Ahmed Rehan Khan was here as well. Initially, I think he has gone already, but again, I want to thank him as well. Thank you to all of you for joining us and listening in. If you have any other questions afterwards, you can still post on our Facebook page. You can, text or post or email us. Most of you guys have contact information of Dr. Shahzad, but I would recommend just using the Facebook page that we have to ask your questions. And when deemed appropriate, we can always forward the questions to Fateh Shahzad as well to be answered. Again, thank you so much.
Get some comments from Numan. He's still online.
Dr. Numan Bhai, are you online?
Ji,
thank you so much. Again, thank you to Dr. Numan Ashar as well. He's our YPC chair. Thanks for organizing this and giving us this time and giving the opportunity to all the medical students to ask the questions. If you have any final parting comments, we'd like to take from you, and then we'll say goodbyes.
I'm not able to turn on my video, but thank you everyone, especially our panelists. It's Sunday, it's Father's Day, taking out the time and being here. One of the longest sessions whenever we do this visa session, it always goes above 2 hours. Again, there are lots of questions. You are welcome to post your questions on our YPC Facebook page, and then we'll be happy to get back to you. I think a lot of people who have already applied for the visa, they're part of our visa groups, so they're getting guidance through Fateh Bhai and others through those groups. So thanks for joining. Some of you, I think it's going to be important for all of you, but especially ones who are meshed. We have an upcoming webinar next Sunday on internship bootcamp. So please join, because the other important issue in my mind after the visa is what do you do once you start your residency? What are the issues people have? We've been hearing a lot of problems in terms of their people getting dismissed from the programs and getting on remediations. So we really want to talk about that. So I hope a lot of people can join. But thank you again. And thanks, Sharam, for conducting it. Omar, everyone, all the panelists, Fateh Bhai, thank you very much.
Dr.
And
Numan,
Manur.
I know you're already have so many webinars arranged for this year with YPC, but would you consider having a we talked a lot about communication today, but would you have one for professional correspondence and some guidance with that?
Manur, so that's usually we do arrange those webinars, but we have a seminar coming up in at Dallas in our summer meeting, and we have invited about 6 program directors, fellowship and general residency program directors, and those will be questions we'll ask them. So everything will be available. Like anything you want from the residency, it should be available from last year on our YouTube page, but also this year we'll update it. It should be part of it, but if there's still a need, throughout the year we will have webinars on those specific topics too. But they're usually covered when we interview the program directors. So it's just a small section on communication. We cover that.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Again, goodbyes for now, and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Enjoy Father's Day, whoever is the father. I guess we should probably have a virtual cake at some point, but we're already above time, and it's more than 2 hours now. So goodbyes, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today.
Thank you all.